In this video, I'll show you how you can track any layer onto any object in Adobe After Effects. I will run through the pros and cons of Mocha Pro, and I'll show you how you can track masks in Adobe After Effects. Firstly, drag your footage into the timeline. I guess you knew that already, but I thought I'll remind you anyway. It is very important that your footage was shot at a high frame rate, preferably 60 frames a second. Limit reflections on the surface you are going to track, and make sure there is contrast between your object and your background. Ensure the scene is well lit and avoid motion blur when possible. I'm then going to drag the layer I want to track onto the surface into After Effects. I'll pre-comp it, moving all attributes into the new composition. Once completed, I'm going to go into the comp and add a new shape layer, ideally a circle. I will hold down the Alt and Shift key to make it proportional. This will be needed later and can be deleted after the track has been successful. We'll get back to why this is important later. I'll scale down the footage to match the comp, and I'll go back into the main one, disabling the layer temporarily while we work on the track. Now, before we open up the Mocha window, ensure your playback resolution is set to full, otherwise the Mocha track will not be as effective and it will have a hard time tracking your scene. I'll open up Mocha by going into the Effects window, Boris FX Mocha, and then clicking Mocha AE. I'll click on the Mocha logo to launch the program. I'll set the workspace to the Essentials 1 to begin the track. I'll then choose the X-Spline tool at the top of the screen, and I'll add 4 points on the track and markers on the screen. I'll add it on the crosshairs as it is the most contrasted point on the screen. Once done, I'll right click to complete the tracking markers. Going to the top of the screen, I'll now select the blue box with an S in the middle of it. This is the planar surface and its corners will line up with your tracked layer, or whatever you want to track onto the object. Therefore, I'll align the planar surface to the object I want my layer to be tracked onto. You should be very accurate with this, as the better it is, the better the finished result will be. Once done, I'm going to hide it by clicking the blue box again at the top of the screen. As for now, we'll work on the tracking points, because if they're not tracked onto your object properly, and they're going all over the place, then so will your planar surface. So we want to make sure the track is perfect, and to do that, I'm going to go back into the classic workspace. Now, stop right there, because before you do that, do what I didn't do. In the Essentials workspace, you see the perspective button. Yes, click that. That is your tracking mode. That will enable the perspective tracking, and it will make your tracking go a lot smoother with less errors and drift. I wish it was enabled by default. I am always forgetting to enable it. Either way, I'll go back into the classic workspace and I will hit the track forward key to start off the tracking. I'll fix any slip-ups and large movements that tracking points may have. The better these tracking points adhere onto your object, the better the track will be, so take your time with this to get it right the first time. Otherwise, you will not be able to go back and change them once Mocha has been added to your footage. As you can see, Mocha has an advantage over any other tracking software, and although 2 of its 4 tracking points have gone off screen, Mocha is still able to interpret the footage and track normally as if they were still there. So the tracking process is now complete, and it's gone through quite successfully. There were a few drifts with the tracking points that I had mended, but apart from that, it's a pretty decent track. But we are not finished yet. We need to sort out that planar surface and make sure it adheres to the object we want to track. And so I'm going to go to a frame where I can see all 4 corners of the object and enable the blue S again, you know, the planar surface. I'll fit it to the corners of the screen as that is where I want my layer to be tracked onto. Remember, the corners of the planar surface will be where the corners of your layer will end up onto the object. In this case, the phone, and so I will take my time with this and make sure it is as accurate as possible. You can push in with the scroll wheel to move about and zoom in and out with the zoom tool. Now, if your planar surface has stayed in the exact place and has not moved or drifted over the footage, then good job, you have done an amazing track. However, you can see the planar surface has not adhered to the position I put it in my case. It is drifted over time as the tracking points have been adjusted, and so when I move the planar surface back into position, on the previous frame the planar surface is no longer in the same place I put it in. It has moved again. This is an issue with Mocha, as unlike the tracking points, the planar surface does not keyframe as you move it in time. So with the tracking points, when you move them, they'll stick to the new position until they are moved or you move them in time again, and keyframes will be added to keep them in position. Now this does not occur with the planar surface. It does not keyframe as you move it, so I'll go back to the first frame and adjust the planar surface onto the object and make it as accurate as possible. Once done, I'll play the video until the corners of the planar surface move from their original position, and if they do, which in my case they have, I'll go into the adjust track panel and click set master all. This is essentially enabling keyframes for the planar surface. As you move it, keyframes will be added and the planar surface will move over time as you animate it, and when it drifts you can move the planar surface back into its original position and it will stay in the exact same place on the previous frames, unlike it did before. Now this is a lot harder to keyframe than the tracking points themselves, and so when you've adjusted the planar surface, keep going back through the footage until the planar surface stays in the exact position. I found this to be a tedious task, but in the end I had little drift, and so I decided it was good enough for me. Now that the planar surface and the tracking points are locked into position and are not flying all over the place, I'll exit out of Mocha, making sure to hit save, and we can now begin to link the tracking data to our layer. So I'm going to go into the tracking data submenu and click create tracking data. I'll select layer 1, then OK. I'll change the corner pin to corner pin support motion blur and change the none to the layer I want to track onto the object. In this case it is the pre-comp with the circle in it. Now I'm going to apply the export and turn on the layer. As you can see, the whole layer is now squished and rather distorted. This happens with Mocha as it is trying to fit the layer into the aspect ratio of the planar surface. Not to worry though, as at the start we made this very easy for us to fix with the circle and the pre-comp. All we need to do is go into the pre-comp, select all the layers and hit S on the keyboard to bring up the scaling options. I'll unlink the proportional scaling with the chain icon next to the digits, and I'll adjust the scale of the X and Y axis to make them squished into the opposite direction. Going back into the main comp, you can see the layer is now beginning to look kind of normal. I can't see the other circle, so I'll go back into the pre-comp, adjust the color to make it more visible, change the position and adjust the scale once again, going back and forth between the two comps until the circle looks like the other. Once done the discreting process, your image should look normal. The main advantage of doing this in a pre-comped layer is that you can easily add or remove images to the objects without de-squeezing or repositioning them again. So our tracking is now complete. However, there is one final step to conclude this video. As you can observe, the image has now been perfectly tracked onto the phone. However, the image is on top of the phone, not on the screen itself. And so I'll move the image comp under the main layer and make a mask on the phone to have the image behind it. So we'll start off with a simple mask, and after inverting it we'll head into the tracker panel. By default the tracker method is set to position, scale and rotation. You need to change it to perspective, otherwise the tracking of the mask will have a very difficult time finding the object. Hit track forward key and it should do a fairly decent job at tracking the mask. Of course you still need to manually adjust the mask when it slips up every now and then, but the mask tracked very well. Occasionally when you go to adjust the mask anchor point you will end up creating a new shape or a new mask. To avoid this, ensure your pen tool is selected along with your mask. You want to create a new point on the mask which can be deleted later, and once you have got that selected, you should be able to move the mask and points just fine. Once that is all set about, you should have a perfectly tracked sequence in Adobe After Effects using Mocha or Mocha Pro, and a perfectly tracked mask in Adobe After Effects. That is all I have to offer, and I hope you had learned something new.